I've never felt fear like I did that night, sitting 18 inches away from another person. My name's Ryan. I'm 33. I work in insurance out of Chattanooga. And 2 summers ago, me and my friend Derek did an overnight trip in the Cherokee National Forest. Derek was the outdoors guy, planned the route, brought most of the gear, knew the area way better than I did. What Derek also did was drink almost a fifth of bourbon after we made camp. By around 8:30, he was completely unconscious in his sleeping bag, boots still on. I stayed up by the fire a little longer, then finally crawled into the tent around 10. At some point later, I woke up. I don't know what time it was, but I woke up to a sound coming from the trees northeast of camp, maybe 60 feet out. Low, intermittent, almost rhythmic. Not an animal sound I recognized. It stopped after maybe 2 minutes. Then a few minutes later, it started again. Same exact spot. I sat up slowly and cracked open the tent mesh, just enough to look outside. The fire was dead, just a faint orange glow in the ash. Moonlight lit up the clearing and the first line of trees beyond it. That's when I saw it. Something standing right at the tree line. And I know how that sounds. I know people see shapes in the dark, but I was fully awake. And what I was looking at was not a stump, not a branch. It was partially behind a tree, low to the ground, but not fully on all fours either. And the proportions looked wrong. Not impossible, just wrong enough that my brain couldn't settle on what it was. And it was completely still. Not frozen out of fear, still the way living things get still when they are deliberately choosing not to move. I stared at it, and it stared back. Then the sound started again. Same location, same low rhythmic sound, and my stomach dropped. I reached into my bag and grabbed the camp knife I kept clipped inside. 4-inch fixed blade, completely useless if something actually came into camp, but holding it felt better than holding nothing. I tried waking Derek up. Nothing. I shook him harder, told him to wake up right now. He mumbled something, rolled over, and passed right back out. That's when it hit me. I was alone. I sat in the tent doorway, knife in my hand, watching the tree line. And the shape never came closer. It just stayed there. Every few minutes, my brain would almost convince me it was a bear sitting back on its haunches, or maybe a branch catching the moonlight wrong. Then I'd look again, and something about it would feel wrong all over again. At some point, I realized I was shaking, not from the cold, from waiting. The forest had gone completely silent. No insects, no leaves moving, nothing. Just me staring at that thing and waiting for it to decide what it was going to do. And that was the worst part, not knowing. Not knowing if it was going to leave or come closer. The sky started turning gray sometime before sunrise, and the shape was just gone. I never saw it leave. 1 second it was there, the next second it wasn't. Derek finally woke up around 6:30, hungover as hell, but otherwise completely fine. I told him everything, and he immediately said it was probably a bear. I wanted him to be right. Honestly, I still want him to be right. But bears don't stay perfectly motionless at the edge of a campsite for over an hour, making sounds I've never heard before. And I still can't stop thinking about that feeling, sitting there in the dark with another person less than 2 feet away, and somehow still feeling completely alone, waiting for something I couldn't understand to either leave or come closer, and not knowing which one it would choose. saw it for maybe 12 seconds. Broad daylight, clear weather, nothing wrong with me, and 2 years later, I still don't have an explanation. My name's Aaron. I'm 36. I work in logistics out of Greenville, South Carolina, and I hike maybe twice a month. Nothing extreme. I'm not some survival guy. I've done the same ridge loop in the Nantahala 8 or 9 times over 4 years. I know that trail well. I was about 4 miles in, on the back section where the trail follows an open ridge line. There's a long slope falling away to the left side, mostly brush and scattered trees. It was around 11 in the morning, full sun, perfect visibility. I'd slept fine. Ate breakfast. Felt completely normal. I stopped at this rock shelf that sticks out over the slope. I've stopped there before. You can see miles from it, probably 2 miles of ridgeline running south. That's when I saw it. It stepped out of the tree line down on the slope below me, and it was walking upright. 2 legs, steady pace, moving across an open patch of hillside, maybe 300 feet below where I was standing. It stayed in the open for maybe 12 seconds total. Then it disappeared back into the trees. Here's what I know I saw. Not what I think I saw. What I know. It was big. Way bigger than a person. Uniformly dark. Not clothing dark. Animal dark. And it moved like moving that way was completely natural to it. Long strides, covering ground faster than a normal walk, without looking rushed at all. The neck looked short. The arms looked too long compared to the body, and they swung with the stride. Nothing about it looked awkward. Nothing looked labored. It moved like something that had spent its entire life moving exactly that way. I didn't call out, didn't move toward the slope. I just stood there, completely still, and I felt every assumption I normally operate on quietly switch off. I stayed on that rock shelf for maybe 20 minutes, just watching the tree line where it had disappeared. Nothing ever came back out. Then I went down the slope, and I know that wasn't smart, but there's a part of your brain that overrides everything else when it needs to verify something badly enough. And I needed to verify this. The open patch was maybe 200 feet across, rocky slope, low blueberry scrub. When I got down there, I could see the brush had been disturbed, not torn up, not flattened randomly, pressed down in a line, distinct compressions, spaced apart, exactly like what I'd watched crossing the slope. A stride. Longer than mine. By a significant amount. I followed the line to the far tree line, dense laurel thicket, the kind that closes up after 10 feet, almost impossible to move through quietly. I stood there, listening. Nothing. No movement, no sound. I walked back up to the trail, finished the loop, and sat in my car for a long time afterward. I've only told 4 people. My brother said it was a bear standing up and walking. But I know what that looks like. A bear stands, takes a few awkward steps, drops back down. This thing crossed 300 feet on 2 legs without breaking stride. The proportions were wrong. The movement was wrong. The duration was wrong. My brother changed the subject after that. A woman I work with grew up in western North Carolina. I told her the whole story, and when I finished, she got quiet for a second. Then she said her grandfather used to talk about something the old families in that area had a name for. She said, if you ever saw one, the only right thing to do was look away and keep walking. And the way she said it was what bothered me. Not dramatic, not spooky. Matter of fact, like she was telling me the speed limit on a road I'd already driven. I asked her what her grandfather thought it was. She said she didn't really know. Just that it had been in those mountains longer than people had, and that it mostly left people alone. I've been back to that trail once, stopped at the same rock shelf, looked down at the same slope. The scrub had grown back. Everything looked normal. I didn't go down there again, and I won't. Because every time I'm standing on an open ridge now, looking out over a long drop with tree lines on both sides, there's always this half second before my eyes move where I'm not sure I actually want to see what's down there. That half second didn't exist before that morning. I saw her for literally a moment, in broad daylight, and I still can't wrap my head around it. My name's Grant. I'm 39. I work as a paramedic in Knoxville. And 2 years ago, I was doing a solo hike in the Cherokee National Forest. I was maybe 5 miles into the loop when I stopped to adjust my pack strap. That section of trail runs through older forest, big hemlocks, open enough between the trees that you can see pretty clearly in every direction. That's when I noticed movement, maybe 50 feet off the trail. At first, I thought it was another hiker, a woman-shaped figure moving parallel to the trail through the trees, normal walking pace. Nothing dramatic. I watched for a couple seconds, expecting her to just keep going. Then she stopped and slowly turned her head toward me. And something about the face was immediately wrong. Not injured, not deformed, just wrong in a way I still can't explain properly. The eyes looked too large, too far apart, and the features felt compressed toward the center of the face. Even from that distance, I could tell something about it didn't fit together correctly. She stood completely still, watching me. Not frozen the way a normal person freezes after getting startled, more like an animal watching something from cover. That's when I noticed the hands. Long fingers hanging at her sides. And the proportions looked wrong there too. Same feeling as the face, like everything was close enough to human, except for the parts that weren't. We stood there looking at each other for maybe 8 seconds. Then she turned and walked deeper into the trees. Not fast, not frightened, just calm, like she already knew exactly where she was going. I stayed on the trail. And I know some people would have gone into the trees for a closer look. I didn't. And honestly, I think some part of me already knew I did not want to get any closer to whatever I'd just seen. I finished the hike pretty fast after that, kept scanning the woods the entire way back. Every movement in the trees kept pulling my eyes sideways. When I finally got back to the trailhead, I sat in my car for a while, and I tried really hard to force a normal explanation onto it. Another hiker with unusual features, bad lighting through the trees, my brain misreading details from a distance. But the problem was, it wasn't bad visibility. It was clear daylight. Open woods. And I looked at it long enough that none of those explanations ever really stuck. What bothered me most wasn't even the appearance. It was the stillness, the way it watched me without any sign of surprise or nervousness. Like seeing another person in the woods wasn't unusual to it at all. That's the feeling I haven't been able to shake. I still hike. I was back in the Cherokee earlier this year, different trail, nothing strange happened. But I notice things now. I look into the trees more than I used to, especially late in the day. When the sunlight starts stretching sideways through the woods, because part of me still expects to see that face again, standing between the trees, perfectly still, already watching me before I even realize it's there. I've done over 200 nights in the backcountry, and I've never cut a trip short before this one. My name's Calvin. I'm 41. I teach history in Charlotte, and most of my free time I spend hiking alone in the mountains. This happened in late September in the Cherokee National Forest. I'd planned the trip for several days. The first night was completely normal. I made camp on a flat bench above a creek, cooked dinner, read for a while, went to sleep. Sometime during the night, I woke up suddenly, and I heard movement directly above my tent. Not nearby, not off in the woods, right overhead in the canopy. Slow movement. Branches creaking, one at a time. Like something heavy was moving carefully through the trees, maybe 3 feet up. I lay there listening, trying to identify it. Too heavy for a raccoon, too controlled for a squirrel. Bears climb trees, I know that, but this didn't sound like an animal just scrambling around. It sounded deliberate. The movement stopped, directly above camp. I slowly unzipped the tent and looked out. The moon was bright enough that I could see the canopy clearly, but I couldn't see anything in the branches. Then I noticed one branch above the tent, bent downward, not swaying, not moving in the wind, just flexed lower than the others, like something heavy was sitting on it. And it stayed that way. I watched that branch for at least 30 minutes, never saw anything move, never saw a shape, nothing. Then the sound started again, slow movement through the canopy, from branch to branch, moving deeper into the trees. And after that, I didn't sleep at all. In the morning, I checked the tree above camp. The branch was high enough and thick enough that whatever bent it had real weight behind it. I looked for claw marks, damage on the trunk, broken bark. Nothing. And honestly, that bothered me more than the sounds did. I packed up, kept hiking, told myself I'd reassess later. A couple hours after leaving camp, I stopped at an overlook to eat. And while I was sitting there, I noticed a large hemlock near the edge of the trees. One of the upper branches was bent downward, exactly the same way. No wind, nothing visible in the tree, just the branch hanging under invisible weight. I walked over slowly and looked up into the canopy. Nothing there. That was the moment I decided I was done. I turned around, hiked back out, drove home that same night. And I've tried to explain it ever since. Maybe a bear, maybe large birds moving through the canopy. But none of it explains the weight, the silence, or the way those branches stayed bent with nothing visible on them. What bothers me most is the second tree, because either something moved through the canopy ahead of me while I was hiking and stopped above that overlook before I got there, or there was never anything there at all. And somehow, those branches were bending on their own. I don't know which explanation I hate more. I still hike, but now, anytime I camp under heavy canopy, I catch myself looking up into the branches before I go to sleep.